Let me just remind you of the motion at the moment. This House believes the international community must accept Hamas as a political partner. There's a lady in the third row who's had her hand up for a very long time.
We've clarified that we want democracy in the Middle East, and Palestine voted for Hamas, right? Denying Hamas as a political power due to its past actions, isn't it like you're punishing Palestinians for doing what they're supposed to? And wouldn't it cause the Palestinians to lose trust, let alone faith, within the international community, thenceforth causing them to be even more violent?
David Frum.
I just think that this idea that you should make policy without regard to what you know about the world is very unwise.
Should you make policy without regard to what people's views are?
The United States and the other democracies are going to make policy based on, yes, exactly, on people's views.
They're paying a price in this region for it, aren't they?
On the views. Yes, but you know what? You know what? This region is paying the price. It is paying a much more severe price. It is this region that is threatened with violence, and it is this region that is disgraced in the eyes of the world if it supports organizations like Hamas. And let me say, just finally on your question, when you talk about what the Palestinians are supposed to do, there have been opportunities and opportunities and opportunities for a peaceful resolution dating back to 1948. It is the unwillingness to accept peace, a peace that includes the existence of the State of Israel. It is the deep unwillingness to do that that is the source of a conflict through which Israel has become stronger and stronger and richer, and the Middle East and the rest of the Middle East has sunk more and more deeply into chaos and war and violence. And the price of Hamas is paid in Algeria, it's being paid in Iraq, it's going to be paid in Saudi Arabia, it's going to be paid in Egypt. That is where the price is being paid. It is like one of these terrible Greek tragedies, where if you support violence, it is on your own head that the violence begins.
Let's move to a question in the third row.
My question is to Mr. Cohen. Do you think that now Hamas, now in power, would be able to convince other organizations to end their terrorist attacks on Israel?
Well, I know that there are some people on this panel that will think it's a subterfuge in the game, but all the reports on the ground indicate over the last 3 weeks, Hamas has been trying to stop the firing of Qassam rockets into what is described as Israel. I know that over the last 3 weeks, Hamas has dispatched lots of political activists and members throughout the territories and engaged people to try to bring them into the process. I believe that Hamas, like every liberation movement in the world, now that they have finally achieved their say, or hopefully will on behalf of their people, will evolve into a movement which will help to facilitate the peace. The problem is the West wants them to fail. The problem is the West is invested in essentially the status quo. The problem is, a year from now, if things were going well, the gentlemen on the other end of the table would have nothing to gripe about in their grand conspiracy about Muslim terrorists worldwide.
Things will not go well, and things will not go well. And as I listen to this resolution, as I listen to the atmosphere of this House, I just see the terrible fatality of it all coming. That these choices that are being made now by the people in this room, these are choices that come home. That what you are voting for or against is not the future of the State of Israel. It is your future.
I make the exact opposite prediction that you make. I think that things will go well. Hamas will demonstrate, to the surprise of many in the West, that it's able to address this. They will sit and be constructive. And another incentive of their ability to deliver is that they spring from this new Palestinian society. They're not some elite imported leadership that is corrupt and that is essentially undermining a process. They have done all the work at the level of the social services. These are the men and women from this society, of the values of this society, and it's in their benefit that things will go well.
Okay, we're going to take one last question.
I'm addressing my question to the right side of the table. What would have happened to the peace process if Sadat were to have blamed on Begin his terrorist record? Would they have advanced?
Sadat, at his word, Sadat made a psychological leap. Sadat cut through the Gordian knot. Sadat went and accepted Israel and sat down to speak. That is the government of Israel of the day, Begin. It is that gesture, that psychological leap, that cutting of the Gordian knot that is required with Hamas. Will Hamas be capable of doing it? Will Hamas recognize its opponent? Will Hamas then meet those conditions, which is now part of the international agreement?
Menachem Begin didn't hold it against Anwar Sadat, that Anwar Sadat had been a supporter of Nazi Germany, because in both cases the events you're referring to had happened a very long time ago, and there had been considerable evolution since then. With Hamas, what we're being asked to forget, not events of 30 and 40 years ago. We're being asked to forget the words in their mouth until the day before yesterday, and the actions that are impending at any moment. And
what were we asked to forget with Begin?
We were asked to forget with Begin that he was involved, that he'd been involved with the Irgun 30 years before.
Other leaders of Israel.
That in Menachem Begin's case, you were asked to forget that 30 years before he had been involved with an extremist group.
All terrorism is bad.
And we were asked to forget that he had been a supporter of the Nazis. And both sides made a peace that has lasted. Now, in the case of Hamas, it is, one of the things that is really disturbing, and as I said, disturbing for you, is you do not want to see the Hamas that is. You're dealing with a theoretical Hamas that in this theory is completely different from its own words and its own actions. And what Sadat did and what Begin did was they dealt with realities. And that is not what this room is doing when it hypothesizes this imaginary Hamas that is different from the real Hamas.
I think this demonization of Hamas is very dangerous and quite counterproductive. You speak of events and you speak of facts as if people are not aware of the positions being taken by Hamas.
And the actions.
If I may, a group that has actually led a campaign which was followed publicly, internationally. There has been indeed a ceasefire for the good part of a year, unilaterally respected. All of these demonstrate a pattern, an engagement, as well as the historical factor which was indicated in which all of these groups enter the political game with a desire for closure, as I mentioned. They really want to bring this to an end, and this is where the international community, you said earlier that this is not about the United States. I agree with you. This is not about the United States.
Okay, well, we unfortunately must bring this to an end. We've come to the point in the proceedings where we're going to vote on the motion that this House believes the international community must accept Hamas as a political partner. Would you please take the voting devices? If you want to vote for the motion, please press button 1, the yellow button. If you want to vote against it, please press button 2, the red button. And would you just press them once according to your vote? Now we should have the vote coming up on the screen. 88.2% in favour of the motion, 11.8% against. The motion has been resoundingly passed. Well, it just remains for me to thank our distinguished panel. Some of them have come a long way to be on the debate tonight. Thank you very much also to our audience for coming. We'll be back next month with more from the Doha debates. Until then, from all of us on the team, thank you very much for coming. Good night. Thank you.